Hey everybody, it's Noah, and today I'm bringing you a deck profile for the Hexaorb Sorceress deck for D-Series. This is probably my favorite deck in the format. I think it's better than people think it is, and I just don't think enough people have really played it to really understand why it's so good. I think people are just looking at it as an OTT clone, and they think that it's weak because OTT couldn't handle a lot of the big power or aggression of the format when OTT was around. So I think because Bastion and Bruce are really popular right now, and even Magnolia to an extent, people are scared to really try this deck out because I think they think it's going to just get steamrolled. And they're not totally wrong. I mean, it definitely isn't super strong against aggro, but it is kind of resilient because of the fact that you can check the triggers, and the turns where it starts going off are really impressive and can push for huge numbers and take the opponent from 2 to 6 like easily. And also with this deck, I would argue you will see your overtrigger more times with this deck than you will with any other deck that's out right now. So if seeing your triggers and seeing specifically your overtrigger is something you want, then you might want to give this deck a try, because with the stacking of triggers and the rearranging at the top of your deck, it's just more chances to see your overtrigger there, and nothing feels better than seeing your overtrigger when you're checking to rearrange for her skill, and knowing that you're going to hit it and setting up your front row to maximize on that overtrigger. Because when this overtrigger goes off, it's usually game over. I mean, honestly, to me, it's one of the best overtriggers that exist, and it's certainly insane in this deck, especially when you compare it with other triggers. So let's get into the deck profile. There's not too much to explain. It's kind of straightforward, and you'll see why. So the starter, I mean, if you're running the deck, you might as well run the starter that goes with it. I know some people prefer the other one, but I think she's amazing. I wish she came SP. I wish this whole ride line came SP. And I know they don't, because it's not like a main character nation or main character deck, I guess. But sad, because these would look amazing SP. But anyway, hollow versions are gonna work fine. So basically this is your starter. Then we've got the grade 1, and her skill is pretty straightforward. When she's rode upon by the grade 2, you counterblast 1, draw a card. She has a rearguard ability, but it's not very good. You definitely won't run it in the deck. I mean, I know some decks do run it, but I just don't think it's worth it. It's basically when you reveal a trigger, you counterblast 1, choose one of your opponent's front or rear guards, and put it to the bottom of their deck. Bottoming it to the deck is great, better than a retire for sure, but it's not worth the counterblast in my opinion, because you have other units in here that use counterblast, and you'd much rather be getting multi-attacks in as opposed to just sort of retiring a rear guard. So probably just using her for the ride skill, to be honest, but it's counterblast, draw a card, which is fine. The grade 2, when she's rode upon, you check top 3 and rearrange them however you want. Amazing, totally free. And then her rearguard ability is when she's placed on rearguard, you look at the top card of your deck, put it to the top or bottom, and if you put it to the bottom, she gets plus 2k. I wish it was 3k for obvious reasons, but I understand why it's 2k, because it would almost be too free if it just got a plus 3k, and it would be really probably too good. So again, she's a checking card, and you'll see in the deck that we do run more of her. And then the main baddie of the deck is Hexaorb Sorceress. So when when you reveal a trigger in a drive check, you give a unit that's not her, a rearguard unit, plus 10k, in addition to the effect of the trigger. So for every trigger you're revealing, you're giving a unit 20k. And again, you can't use her skill on herself, so it has to be a rearguard unit, but it's amazing, because if they PG the Vanguard, you can split your power of your triggers amongst your other 2 rearguards in the front row and just make columns that are gigantic, which is really what makes this deck super strong. And then her other ability is once per turn, if you Persona Road that turn, you counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, you take a front or a crit from your hand and put it on top of your deck, and then you get triple drive. The thing with this skill that's interesting is you do not have to put a front or a crit on top of your deck to get the triple drive. That's just an additional option, because it says put up to, so you can put no fronts or crits and still get triple drive as long as you do the counterblast soul blast. But again, this is only on Persona Ride turns, which is the one drawback of this card, and I don't know how else they would change it, but It just sucks because you have to see your Persona ride with this deck, because if you don't, it's kind of a struggle, not gonna lie, because there's only so many other ways you can really set up the top of the deck, at least right now, and that Persona ride skill is really one of the best ways. And again, even if you just get it for the triple drive, it's also pretty good, because usually it'll hit something. And again, like I said, her first skill makes it so that any trigger you hit is really impactful, because you get double the power basically. All right, so then I guess I'll start with just the triggers. So obviously over trigger. So the over trigger for this is when its additional effect is activated, meaning when you drive check it, not when you damage check it. Your entire front row gets drive check. So you want 2 grade 3s. You want a grade 3 here, and you want a grade 3 there, because then you're getting twin drive, twin drive, twin drive, and one of those twin drives will have 100 million on it. So that's pretty nuts. It's a really good over trigger, and like I said, you'll probably see it more with this deck than any other deck, because of just the stacking mechanic that it comes with. So get comfortable seeing your over trigger. I'm actually running 2 draw. I know this might seem silly. The thing is, it's sort of an illusion that you plus a lot with this deck, because like I explained with Hexagleam or not Hexagleam, Hexaorb, if you do get the triple drive, if you are putting a card from your hand on top of the deck, you're just getting that card back, and then you're getting your twin drive. So you're not really plussing a card if you do that skill, unless you just go for the straight triple drive blind and don't put anything from your hand, then you are plussing. But there's not that many ways where you're really getting an extra card. It's a lot of sort of sacrificing a card to get a card. So I do still like a couple draws in here. When the front triggers come out that are the 20k shield front triggers, these will probably go, because then I won't have the space to use them. But yeah, for now I think a couple draws are fine. They're really good discard fodder too for riding, if you see them early, and they're just that little extra hand power is nice. It does come in handy, honestly. So 2 draw. I'm running 3 fronts. So basically, I like to do the front. If I Persona ride and the opponent's at 5 damage, then I like to put a front on top, just because the front and then the 10k and then all that stuff. It just makes the columns huge. If you only need to hit for 1, but most of the time I usually go for a crit with her skill. So for me, fronts are okay, but not super necessary right now. I mean, again, once the fronts come out that are 20k shields, I'll be running 4, mostly for the 20k shield, but then it's fine to be running it that way. But yeah, I like crits better in this deck, and I don't really want to cut those draws yet. And then I am running 6 crit for now. So I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's crits. I was going to think of something like clever to say about them, but you guys get it. I mean, crits are great. Stacking crits on top is terrifying for the opponent, because on a triple drive, when you put a crit on top, if they're at 3, they're terrified. They're probably going to PG it. But then if they PG it, you just assign those crits to rear guards, and don't forget you're getting double the power. So yeah, that's pretty amazing, to be honest. And there's not much more to say about it. It's pressure, and this is how you take the opponent from like 2 to 6 in 1 turn if they just don't have the guard. And again, don't forget, shield value is kind of decreased right now, so it's tougher to guard huge attacks, and when those huge attacks have 2 or 3 crit on them, that can just easily be game. So this deck can really pull out some crazy wins super fast and out of nowhere if you get that set up. And then obviously 4 heal, because we need to heal. Alright, so grade 1s. I am running 2 copies of this unit. So basically she's just, I think every nation got a card that does this. Just when she boosts, she gets plus 2k. She's just a 10k booster. I like that in this deck. Again, we are running a lot of grade 3s, so they are 23k columns, which is really nice. Really scary for the opponent. There's not really much more to put in there. You could put the counter charger, but I've noticed that it's actually a brutal cost. It's like, I believe it's Soul Blast 2 to countercharge 1 when you hit a trigger. So it just has like so many requirements and so much resource. Like Soul Blasting 2 is huge in this deck. So for 1 counterblast, it doesn't really make sense to me. So I just don't run them in here at all, because I'll show you why. So I just like getting the power on her, or the power from her rather, a little bit better, just because the extra 2k does make a big difference in those columns. Then I'm running 4 copies of Painkiller Angel, and this is one of the reasons why I don't want to use a lot of Soul Blast, because this is really nice. So basically at the end of the battle that she boosted, you Soul Blast 1, retire her, and draw a card. And again, this isn't really a plus because you are losing this card to get a card, so it's kind of just filtering and helping replace itself. But again, you do want to see a lot of cards because you want to get your Persona rights into your hand. That is really important with this deck, and you just want to see your pieces too if you're looking for something in particular. So I like to be able to just kind of drop her down and just fish for some cards and just, you know, have that extra 8k on board for a turn and help boost something, and then she goes away. So yeah, so I'm running her at 4. Again, this is pretty much the reason why I don't run the other unit, because you just won't have the soul to do both her and the other unit. And also we have another answer. So the other unit we're running, this is an important unit you have to run it for. This is one of your checkers. And basically what she does is when she's placed in rear guard, you Soul Blast 1, again, this is Soul Blast, and you have to rest her, and then you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, you put 1 on top of the deck and 1 on the bottom of the deck. So yeah, basically it's just one of your checking units. It helps set up the top of the deck, helps set up your triggers. She's really, really good, and we don't have that many units that help you check right now, so you want to play all the ones that you can. And then obviously 4 perfect guards, because you need 4 per guard. Moving on to grade 2s, this is pretty small. Running 3 more copies of our grade 2. Again, I explained what she does, but just as a reminder, for rear guard, when you place her, you check the top card, put it to the top or bottom. If you put it to the bottom, she gets plus 2k until the end of the turn. So again, it's one of your checkers. You want to have that at 4 if you can. And then I'm actually running 2 copies of Rooks. You do run a lot of grade 3s in this deck, so the chances of him being a booster are really strong. The other grade 2 that kind of goes with this is just it's when a trigger gets revealed, Soul Blast 1 and she gets plus 5k. Not that great. Again, and a Soul Blast cost is definitely not worth the plus 5k to me. So I'd rather just get 3 grade 3s out and just have him be a boosting unit for 15k. There's your plus 5k right there, plus it's a booster. So again, I'm only running him at 2 because it's not going to be super necessary to see him, but he's just a better grade 2 than the other grade 2 in my opinion. And I wouldn't want to drop him for more grade 1s just because it's nice to have that 15k boost. It makes the columns really big and just helps pressure the opponent out. But again, the requirement for him is you have to have 3 or more grade 3 units out for him to get the boost in plus 5k, so you want to make sure you have obviously your Vanguard will be grade 3. You want to make sure these 2 units are also grade 3, because if only one is out, then he is not boosting. So in that case, you would probably just attack with him as a 10k, which is also fine. But yeah, so I'm running 2 of him just because I think it's nice in here. Some decks go really heavy on the grade 3 and they play it almost like Bastion. I think that's a big mistake. I don't think that's the best way to run this deck. You will have huge hand full of nothing. Bastion has a reason to run a ton of grade 3s because he's using that to restand his units. And that makes sense to me, but I wouldn't run a ton just to get him to be going off. It's not worth it. Definitely not. So then we have obviously 3 more copies of Hexaorb because that is the main part of the deck. Then for our other grade 3s, we're running 4 copies of Lepisto. So basically she's kind of an annoying card for the opponent to deal with. When you reveal a trigger, you counterblast 2 and restand her, and she gets plus 5k. So you can set it up so when you know you're going to hit a trigger, you'll just swing with her first, and then you get it to go off. But again, it is counterblast 2. So this is what I mean by like the resources are really tight, because there's a lot of units at Soul Blast and there's a lot of units at Counterblast heavy. So it makes it a little tricky. You got to manage your resources very well with this deck. But the answer for that is our other grade 3, which is Fasado. This is sort of the bread and butter of the tech, honestly, because he is letting you continue to do all your skills. So basically, if you don't know him already, he's also in Bastion. He cannot be chosen by opponent's card effects, which is just phenomenal. I mean, it's good against Nirvana. It's good against Prison if you happen to run into it. That's just a good skill. And then its second ability is when it hits anything, doesn't have to hit Vanguard, you countercharge and soul charge. So to me, that's just better than the grade 1 because you don't have to pay a Soul Blast 2 to get 1 countercharge. It just has to hit. And again, it can hit a rear guard. So just to get it to go off if you need it. It's great. So he's pretty much refilling all your soul and giving you all your counter charge that you're going to need. And if they want to block him every time he attacks, they're more than welcome to, but then they just won't have hand for when you go off with your Hexaorb turns. So that's also fine. I don't see him getting replaced anytime soon, unless we get some other really good double rare card for set 2. But the Sorceress card that came out that's sort of like a lighter version of him is not just, it's just not as good. It's more just a cheaper version of him. And it is a common, so it literally will be a cheaper version, but like even just the skill, it's just a less good version of him. So for budget players, that's good, but anybody that's playing this deck and is trying to make it as optimized as possible, I think he's just better in every way. Plus he has the ability to not be chosen by card effects of your opponents. So yeah, so that's pretty much the whole deck. I mean, again, it's pretty straightforward. All you're really doing is sitting on her and doing as much checking and stacking as you can, and just swinging for huge numbers and getting, restands off with her, putting pressure on with him, and then the rest is history. Again, if you played OTT, this should feel really comfortable for you. And if you haven't, maybe give it a try. You might really like it. I think this deck is definitely better than people are giving it credit for, and I wanted so badly to see it represented at Springfest this weekend, but it unfortunately was not. It was kind of overshadowed by all the Bastion decks, which I understand because Bastion is really good, but I also think this deck is good. I really do. So I would give it a shot if you're interested in it, and if you guys like this video, please like, and if you have any other builds that you're playing, I'd love to hear your lists. So leave those in the comments below. And as always, if you like our content, please subscribe. We do upload videos twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays. And we'll continue to do that with a lot more G-Series content. So until next time, see you later.